Good afternoon, Immortal Anthem fans. For those of you who are enjoying this content, please like and subscribe to get any type of new updates, content, or information that we're going to be putting out. This is going to be a very long and exciting book. We're not sure how much of it we're going to put out at first, as far as it being audio, but I will put out as much as I can. Please leave some comments. Let us know what you think. Thank you. And here we go. Mommy. Yes, dear. Tell me about Thalen again. Not tonight, honey. It is late, and you need your sleep. I will tell you a short bedtime story, and we will sit down soon for me to tell you of Thalen the Great. Okay? Please? Isis sighs and looks into her daughter's pleading green eyes, her father's eyes, and says, "Very well." Geb is leaning against the doorway of the child's bedchambers, and he smiles at Isis's weakness of her daughter's pleading. He is amazed at how one of the most powerful beings to have ever lived can melt like that for a child. He has some mixed emotions after the talk he and Isis just had. Isis has always been a wonder to him, and because of her sight, he never questions her direction. They have always been close, and he knows her motives are always for the greater good. The visions she sees are never set in stone, but over the last 1,000 years or so, she has learned a thing or two, and her intuition is as sharp as a razor. She has learned the hard way to not go charging in, correcting one of her visions. Geb remembers one time when they were younger, just teenagers to the eyes of the mortals, where she dragged him along on a quest to right a wrong she had envisioned. "Geb, wake up," Isis said in a loud whisper. Her voice was shaky, and she was crying. The look of pain was plain on her face. Geb snapped awake and looked around, wide-eyed, but nothing seemed out of place, and all was quiet. "What's going on?" he said, panic seeping into his bones. "Are you all right? Is everyone else okay?" It happened again. What happened? What's going on? I had another one of those dreams, like the ones I was telling you about. It is so real. It can't possibly be just a dream. We need to do something about it. We need to help that man. What man? He looked around again as if to make sure there wasn't a stranger in his bedchamber. What are you talking about? Tears were slipping off of her face in a steady stream, and she looked so pitiful and hurt. And a stab of pain went through Geb's heart. He reached out and embraced her in a brotherly hug. He didn't know what to say. Her face buried in his shoulder, and her voice muffled as she said through sobs, I am going to save him. As if that was the final decision, she peeled away from his embrace and wiped the tears from her determined face. He noticed that she went from a panicked look to almost an angry look in a matter of seconds. He said, "Let's get the others in." "No, just you and I. No one else knows of these visions, and I don't need a huge discussion about how crazy I am while this poor farmer's life is in danger. We can save him on our own." He looked at her for a moment more, shrugged, and said, "Just us then. Let's get ready, and I'll meet you outside your chambers." She nodded and left the room. As he was getting ready, he couldn't help but feel anxious about not including the others. He's not even sure what is going to happen to the man from her vision. He will use this time with her to talk to her about telling the others of these dreams she's having. They are all discovering new powers and need each other to help hone them into skills. Seeing the future is a scary thought, and Geb hopes it's not a power he one day possesses. An elevator ride down one floor of the Immortals Temple brings him to level 2, Isis's chambers. Each Immortal Protector has an entire level of the 12-floor temple to themselves. The doors slip open to a small lighted chamber with stone walls and a big steel door. Geb could enter her chamber if he needed to, but he sits patiently on the couch next to the door. He closes his eyes and sinks into a meditation while waiting on Isis. He wants to clear his mind of his anxieties and be ready for what may happen during this journey. A noise from the outside breaks through the barrier of his mind and bounces around in the nothingness of his thoughts. At first, he ignores it, and then it comes again a little louder. Ahem. He opens his eyes, and Isis is standing before him, dressed like him in her tactical outfit, with one hand on her hip, staring at him with her eyebrows raised. She looks amused and says, "Catching a little shut-eye before we leave? Did I wake you up too early, sleepyhead?" They were all taught meditation at an early age. Both Geb and Bess took to it quickly. He is now mentally ready for what will happen, or so he thinks. He stands up and puts a hand on her shoulder and says, "Let's do it." Delete. Let's do this. The elevator opens on the first floor, and they make their way to the west entrance through the Hall of Destiny. They slowly walk past the entryway to the inner chamber that holds the large round table and where they have their important discussions. Geb glances in there, and to his relief, the chamber is empty. As they step up to the doorway that leads outside, they are both scanned, and the huge door opens without a sound. The smell of spring seems to slam into them, and they step out to a beautiful and somewhat windy spring morning. The massive 2-story mechanical guards on either side of the doorway loom over them. like tombstones. None of the protectors are completely comfortable with the huge robot gods, partly because they've never seen them move. They don't even sway in the wind like the giant trees in the forest surrounding the temple. There are two on either side of all four entryways to the temple, set in place by the Eternals to protect their immortal children when this place was built. The mountain is out in all its glory in the bright early sunshine. There is still snow around the base of the summit, left over from the past winter. It stands tall at 8,000 feet. In the right weather conditions, can be seen from any of the five kingdoms. The great volcano sits in the middle of the five kingdoms, and all their borders come to a point at the summit. The Immortals Temple was built just east of the mountain in the high valley between the volcano and another peak in the mountain range. The valley has a perimeter of 5 miles and holds the temple, an outdoor training ground, and gardens with fruits and vegetables of all types. There are also livestock and barns to hold the animals and small houses built to hold the various workers and caretakers. The food that was not used by the immortal protectors and the workers in the valley is used to feed the poor throughout the kingdoms. Geb and Isis head towards the west path. That leads to the kingdom of Zucchini. Geb is following Isis. Geb is following Isis's lead and wondering to herself, what kind of mess are they going to get into? Each lost in their own thoughts, neither of them notices the golden eagle floating above them, circling and keeping pace with them. They are walking on a road of dirt with large pastures on their right and left toward the great forest which surrounds the valley and the mountain. The forest is so dense that the roads look as if it's entering a black hole and seems to disappear and lead to an alternative universe. The west path is one of 4 safe passages through the forest. Each path heads in a different direction and towards a different kingdom. As they enter the forest in the west path, the temperature drops about 20 degrees because of the absence of sunlight through the trees. Geb looks up and is always amazed at the size of the trees in this forest. The treetops seem to form a ceiling of nothing but darkness. He can usually hear animal sounds echoing through the forest, but today it is eerily silent. That makes him nervous. And he looks at Isis. She seems to be thinking the same thing because she's suspiciously looking around. He breaks the silence, and she jumps a little at his voice. I think you should share your story of the dreams with the others. A long moment passes before she speaks. I want to be sure that I am having visions and not just dreams before I do that. I don't want to have everyone focusing on these visions while they are trying to work on their own powers. I think it will be a distraction. Fair enough. What will we do when we get to this farmer you saw in your vision? What is going to happen to him? And most importantly, when is this going to happen? How far in the future do you think? Is it even the future you're seeing? Maybe it's the past. There are all kinds of variables to this power you are developing. It makes my brain hurt just thinking about it. Too many questions at once. Now you're making my brain hurt. This vision was so clear, and I think I know the farm I saw. Because there is a sunflower painted on the side of the barn behind the main house. I have seen that barn, and I'm pretty sure I could get us there. As for when, I don't exactly know, but we can at least check out the layout of the area, and I can tell if it all adds up, so to speak. As to what happens to him, he sees her visibly swallow a very large animal, one like I've never seen, even in our studies, attacks him while he is in his field. It comes out of the woods next to the field and basically rips him apart. There was so much blood given. So much blood. His dog tries to come to his rescue and it horribly dies too. I need to save him. I know he has family too. I know this because a single farmer probably wouldn't paint a picture of a sunflower on the side of his barn. And they might be in danger as well. He watched her stare at her walking feet as she said this. When she stopped talking, he said, "We need to save him. It's not like you against the world, Isis. We have your back. I hope we can take this beast on our own. I'm wishing I didn't let you talk me into it just being us, but we will check it out. And if it looks too dangerous, we will get the others, okay?" She made a quick nod, still staring at her feet. They both looked up in the same direction as they finally heard a sound of leaves rustling above them, but saw nothing. The eagle landed on a tree branch out of their sight. They finally emerged from the darkness of the forest into the blinding afternoon sun. The plains of Zucchini are an awesome sight. They seem to go on forever. The new green of spring covers the landscape like a blanket, and the smell of flowers dominates the wind. Blinking back tears from the bright sunlight, Geb says, "How much further?" Isis, unbothered by the light, doesn't respond. She seems to be in deep thought, still staring at her feet, just like an annoying sibling might do. He reaches out and pushes her by the shoulder, and she almost stumbles off the path into the high weeds filling the drainage ditch to her left. She looks at him with a look that simply states, "Try that again." They stop and stare each other down, and the built-up stress of the unknown future encounter of some mystical beast releases itself from them in gales of laughter. They sit down in the shade of a tree on the side of the road and eat some fruit she picked for their journey. They discuss the incoming encounter and lay out a simple plan. A few hours later, Isis stops walking and closes her eyes as if she's concentrating on something. Geb says nothing and waits. She opens her eyes and looks to the right at a break in the fence surrounding a cornfield. She heads towards the fence and they find a footpath beyond the break, disappearing through the high corn stalks. The farmers in zucchini are the best in the world, and the fact that the corn plants are already producing vegetables this early in spring is not surprising. She walks down the path and Geb follows. Geb looks up and catches his first glimpse of the eagle floating above them. He thinks nothing of it as he follows Isis through the field. They will all think twice about the animals following them in the future, but as of now, at his young, tender age of 300 years or so, he isn't experienced enough to give it a second thought. The eagle flies off and disappears into the woods that run along the edge of the farmland. Isis comes to a halt next to a last stalk in the row and peers around to the left. There, in a clearing, backing up to the woods to the right, is a fairly large red barn in dire need of repair. Painted on the side of the barn and faded by the sun is a huge, single yellow sunflower. They both look around and see nothing. No farmer, no beast. She steps out and edges herself past the rows of corn to the edge of the clearing, keeping the barn in the woods to her right. On the left is the farmer's house, and on the other side of the clearing is another field of crops, and a small lake can be seen beyond that. She closes her eyes again, and a look of concentration slides across her face. Geb reminds himself to ask what she is doing when she closes her eyes like that, but he certainly isn't going to ask now. Anxiety seems to have crept up from the ground itself and wrapped him in a cold towel. He can feel tension in the air. A dog starts barking and Geb lets out a yelp. Isis opens her eyes and whispers, "We are right on time." Okay, guys. This is going to be part 1, and I'm not exactly sure how many parts there's going to be in this. However, I did listen to some people that told me that the last video was a bit long. So I'm going to try to make this no more than maybe 20 minutes. 25 minutes roughly. Thank you for listening. This is Immortal's Anthem, and good night.